Hey guys, it's the usual. Your host Lance and my brother Matt, 'di ba? Of course, we're here to do the show Project Offbeat podcast. Sanay na kayo dito. We talk about the most offbeaten careers out there. Today, medyo kakaiba yung episode natin, no? Wherein we're trying to tackle an intersection of careers. And for us, that's kind of offbeat, right? Because you don't see a lot of careers that are actually intertwining with each other. You guys may know what a lawyer does, and you guys may know a lot of tech founders out there that has done innovative solutions for our country's wicked problems, right? Pero today we're talking to someone that has managed to merge it all together to become a legal tech entrepreneur, right? So ano ibig sabihin ng career na to? That is what we are doing in this episode today. That's what we're trying to unmask.
Our guest today is the COO of UNAWA, a legal tech company advancing the ease of doing business in the region. His career has been offbeaten to say the least, having started as a lawyer for multiple
Ooh.
offices like MVGS and Q&A Law to co-founding a payment ticketing solution in the form of a startup.
You know what? Let's get right into it. After that, an introduction. Attorney Gino joins us today in the Project Offbeat podcast to talk about the career of being a legal tech entrepreneur, di ba? So, welcome to the show, Attorney Gino. How are you doing today? Kamusta ka, sir?
Hi guys, I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me. You can drop the sir. Gina's perfectly fine. Let's just have a
Gino.
casual conversation.
Thank you, Gino. You know what, Gino? Let's start off with, every one of us here is coming from a company, a tech company, right? But I guess we also are doing these part-time, podcasting, guestings, and whatnot. How are you
Yeah,
feeling
props to
doing
you
this?
guys.
These interviews. How are you doing it?
Well, you guys are definitely making it easier. As I said earlier, it really feels like we're just sitting down having a conversation, missing a drink perhaps. But other than that, I'm doing well. I'm doing good. I still get nervous, especially when
Mhm.
these things are live. So thankfully, this one is recorded and we can cut. But
Yep.
other than that, I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. You know what, Gino? Me and Matt works in Canva. I work in Maya. And we also work with lawyers in our company, diba?
I'm sure you do.
And I know how hard it is to be that lawyer in an ultra agile, ultra speedy environment like a tech company. I guess, Gino, you're also in that same place with Unawa with your different ventures before. How is it like, being a lawyer, in these companies?
I think we have to qualify that a little bit. Yes, I am a lawyer, but I think the definition of lawyer is skewed for the purposes of this conversation.
Mm,
When I do introduce myself as a lawyer, people often think I go to court, I litigate, what you see on TV, what people know,
yeah.
or I deal with respect of many clients. I used to do that. Um, I'd like to say I'm done with that. Who knows? I could go back.
Really? Okay.
Preferably not as a desperation move or helping anyone in need. But it's for the most part, I am done with courtroom and litigation work. So I am now running Unawa from the operational aspect as a
Mm.
lawyer. I am not the lawyer for
Ooh.
Unawa. We have a whole team of
Okay.
lawyers
Okay.
behind Unawa, but
Mm.
operationally, I am just a lawyer running the company, and I just happen to use my legal knowledge and my legal
Yeah.
experience to apply to the technology we put forward. So that's
Ooh.
the difference we have to
Mm.
clarify. I'm not the lawyer
I
of
see.
Unawa. I'm a lawyer
Right.
working in Unawa.
That's very
So
interesting.
definitely offbeat, no?
Yeah. Very, very offbeat. Are you able to share to us, no? Why did you shift, diba? From a
Yeah,
lawyer
no
before,
problem.
now you're going into this operational side with the lawyer
Not
mindset into it.
not naman to make laglag, no. But during the first take of this intro, you guys mentioned my career path a bit. So after graduating from Ateneo in 2010, I was admitted to the bar in 2011. Despite that 1 year gap, first try lang yan, ha? I want to make that known.
Kudos,
One
kudos,
take.
sir. Kudos.
No, so I did, as I said, I did my litigation work, I did my corporate law work, and then after that, I transferred into more corporate law. I acted as the head of legal for a multinational company here in the Philippines. And throughout the legal practice, I think, as you just said, you end up meeting many kinds of people. So in
Mm.
litigation, I
Mm-hmm.
had
Yeah.
how many clients? In corporate, I had several clients again. So I learned a lot from these different people, whether they're CEOs, COOs, CTOs. Meeting with them on a daily basis gave me this experience to move over to the next field. And When UNAWA came about, this merger of, as you guys have been saying, legal and tech, I think it's a very unique industry, a very, for the most part, very likely unheard of industry. Probably an industry that still needs clarification. That's why we have this interview. But I
Yeah.
think the pivot for me was just right. It gave me an opportunity to realize everything I learned as a lawyer, perhaps some of the I don't want to say faults or the missing things in the practice we have here in the Philippines, and how we can modernize it through technology. And that's what UNAWA is trying to do now.
Mm.
And I'd be happy to get into that further on in this podcast.
Attorney Gino, I think both of us are from the tech industry. Were there any realizations that you had entering this space? Maybe you felt was something different, something that gave you more freedom, a lot of creativity, or something like that. Were there any advantages that you discovered when going into this space?
Well, going into the tech space, transitioning from the legal career I used to have is very different. It's both more fast paced, and at the same time, it's also slower, if that makes sense. I work from home now, so that changes quite drastically. I'm not sure if that's really a tech industry thing or
Yeah.
something that jumped because of the pandemic. So I'm happy to say I work from home. I don't have to deal with the traffic of EDSA anymore. But of course, there are differences. The advancement of technology, things like this podcast, for example, or Zoom or Google Meet. What working from home, allows for a lot of more conveniences. Like I get to spend time with my family. I mentioned off
Yeah.
camera to Lance that I have a 20-month-year-old, so getting to see him grow is definitely a positive that I don't think I could do without, right? But
Yeah.
of
Mm-hmm.
course, with
Yeah.
this, we don't have that downtime we used to have. Like I remember part of my personal downtime was driving to court or driving to the office where I could just listen to music and not think about
Downtime na
anything
yun, ah.
else.
Downtime na
Yeah, that
yun,
would
ah.
be my downtime. Traffic
Man,
would be my
wow.
downtime. But
Wow.
here, it's like you're at home, you're not stuck because of this connectivity. I can even take meetings in the car, which for
Yeah.
safety reasons I don't recommend, but it does happen. So
Yeah.
technology has allowed us to do many more things in the limited hours we have in the day,
Yeah.
but also it forces us to do more things. So that balance is still quite important to find, and that's the biggest difference I noticed, like
Yeah.
in this transition. I hope that answers your
Gino,
questions, Matt.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think Gino, you're always introduced as the CEO of UNAWA, no, which is a legal tech company, with the hopes of, simplifying the doing of business in the country, right? But I'd like to unpack first, what does it really
Yeah.
mean to be a legal tech company? 'Di ba?
Okay. No
I just
problem
want
there.
our audience to know that niche of a career. Is that niche? I honestly I'm not sure of it, 'di ba? It's the first time I've heard of a legal tech company.
Exactly. So I think it might be misconstrued a little bit when you say legal technology or legal
Yeah.
tech. When I do tell people I'm in legal tech, particularly those who know me already, because of the fact that I'm an attorney, I think they think legal tech is specifically designed towards law firms or lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the case for
Oh,
UNAWA.
yeah.
While
Yeah.
UNAWA can cater to a law firm or to an individual
Mm.
lawyer, our technology is more all encompassing. It fits just the general populace. So in our sense, we're legal technology in the sense that we focus on the digitization of documents, including its
Mm.
validity,
Mhm.
security, and
Mhm.
enforceability.
Ooh, okay. Siguro dito sa country natin kakailanganin talaga yung digitalization because we've talked to a lot of founders then in our podcast, Gino, and
I know.
they mentioned that just an incorporation of your business takes 3 months at the minimum. At the minimum. I hope your goal is to make that 3 days, maybe 3 days or
Well, that's
or
definitely a
maybe,
possibility too.
right,
Unawa, we
right,
were working with a lot of the regulators in speeding up the way we're doing business. Right now, we are at the proof of concept level with one of our first products, Sign Secure. Simply put, Sign Secure is a digital tool that allows you to upload your electronic signature to a document. And I don't think I need to get into this because of the pandemic. There are a lot of
yeah,
tools that allow for this. However, SignSecure is specifically set for the Philippine setting,
Mm-hmm.
wherein it complies with the electronic evidence laws, it complies with electronic signature laws, and
yeah,
importantly, and hopefully it never becomes the case, Unlike the other platforms, if ever called to court, um, our technology can be considered valid evidence.
Yeah,
So that's where I think the legal comes in, that our
I see.
technology has legal
Mm.
application and legal viability.
Do you know, I can't help
Wow.
but think, no, parang, do you think you were hired in this company rin because of your legal background? Because
100%.
parang, 'di ba? Parang when you were just explaining science secure earlier, it feels like a complex technology and you need to know the backbone of everything about that, no. Do you think
Well,
you were hired in?
I don't think you would need to be a lawyer to do what this is. As I said, particularly here at UNAWA, we have a whole team of the best lawyers backing us up. So all of the legalities are always covered. But
Yeah.
for me, I think one reason that I was asked to join the company is because that I have that legal background as well as that startup and tech background,
Mm.
working as the chief legal officer for a few startups. So I was really exposed into that. So it's definitely helpful, but I wouldn't say it's a requirement.
About Unawa, what would you say is the most difficult part of like applying it to the local setting? Are there certain forms or certain government licenses or whatnot that is the most difficult to kind of digitalize? Or is it more of the perception and hesitation of people to actually use that kind of technology?
That's a very good question, and actually, you answered it for me. Both things you mentioned are the hindrances we face. Some of the hindrances a company like Onawa faces is both the regulatory landscape as well as the enterprise and commercial landscape. So first, what we are trying to push forward is a new way of doing business, and that is
Mm.
through the digitized document. If we want to go more highfalutin about it, we can talk about why we should go digital. There are
Yeah.
many reasons to go to digital. One is environmental impact. I think that's very important. From a startup perspective and from a fundraising perspective, I'll be very honest, it is quite a sexy thing to be doing. Everyone is concerned about the environment right now, and rightfully so. So, having something that can eliminate paper from our daily life is very important.
Yeah.
Two, digitization also enhances security and gives you back a lot of time, something that's very valuable nowadays. If we go back to the law firm setting, there hasn't been a lot of innovation in the legal field.
Totoo yan.
Uh, a,
Totoo yan.
a
Yeah.
law office can grow by hiring more lawyers. They can take more clients, but at the end of the day, these lawyers, no matter how many they are, can only do so much. They are limited by, they are human. They are limited by what they can do. If you digitize certain things, you speed it up. Like through our SafeForm platform, for example,
Yeah.
contracts can be automatically drafted. If you're not a law firm, you can use SafeForm um, to draft your, let's say, a sales invoice or a
Yeah.
contract of lease, any document can be now digitized and created so that your workflow is much more seamless and the human component is no longer there. If I
Yeah.
am to break it down for a very, very silly comparison, it's how we now have RFID and EPAS as opposed to paying toll or collecting your parking ticket.
Yeah, yeah.
There's now a
Yeah.
step that automates it, and that's what the legal field and that's what the businesses have been lacking. The other
Yeah.
aspect I mentioned was regulation. So while we are pushing and proposing a digitized version of doing everything, a lot of things still require paper and wet signatures. For example, any document that needs to be notarized has
Notarized.
to be
Yeah.
printed and has to
Yeah.
be signed physically. So any digital or electronic signature cannot be used as a notarized document. I am happy to say Unawa is working closely with the Supreme Court to push for the
Thank
allowing
you.
of electronic notarization. And in fact, we already do have a e-notary product that's ready for launch pending the release of this litigation regulation.
Yeah.
The second
Yeah.
aspect, what Matt asked, was apprehension. A lot of people are not comfortable. Just like it is with many new things, change is always frowned upon to a degree. So you can imagine telling people now that you can sign on your iPad, you can sign on your computer, your phone. You don't need to do it on paper. There's a lot of concerns. Is it secure? Is it safe? Baka mahack ako. And we can counter that by saying, do you think it's much more secure from a paper perspective? Like, because people are so used to what they're doing, they'd rather not make that change. But here at Onawa, we're trying to remind people that change is not only a good thing, it's also cost effective. For example, We did a little bit of research. I'll go back to the paper aspect of it. A regular
Mm-hmm.
business, a small SME of about 5 people, will spend about, let's round it up a bit to 100. Will spend about 100,000 pesos a year on paper-related items, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
that is storage of paper, the purchasing of paper, the printing, and the time looking for it. You don't take that into account. If you move over to a digital tool, a digital platform,
Yeah.
that's all eliminated, and you're spending much less. Let's say, sorry, shameless plug. The Science Secure business account will cost you about 14,000 pesos a year. That's a fraction of what you'd be spending on
Mm,
just the
mm.
use of paper and your ink and
Yeah.
your printer. And I'm
Yeah.
not even talking about all of the other conveniences that comes with all of the other security measures that will bring for you and anything like that. So it's really that. It's the regulation space, which I'm again very happy to
Mm.
say we're at the forefront lobbying these changes, and I think it's coming very soon. And two, it's the perspective of the perhaps the older generation who are looking to make that shift.
Yeah.
Right. Ang galing, no, Lance?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely, definitely. Parang totoo yun, because before I worked in Maya, I actually worked in Meralco. And, I love the company, but man, we spent so much in paper. Our At the forefront of our company goals is sustainability, and yet here we are
sustainability.
printing
Yes.
so printing so many paper just to get the boss's approval, right? So
Oh,
I
exactly. That's
can, yeah,
part of the reason we came into this. And again, I have to go
yeah,
back to my legal background. Can I just as an example?
yeah,
If I a case before the Supreme Court, for example, by the time
yeah.
you reach
Oo.
the Supreme Court, you would have gone through the regional trial court, perhaps Court of
Mm-hmm,
Appeals, depending
mm-hmm.
on how you've been appealing your cases. By the time you go to the Supreme Court, every pleading you had filed in any of the lower courts or appellate courts, you're going to have to resubmit. Not only do you have to resubmit that to the Supreme Court, you have to make a
Grabe,
copy per justice.
grabe.
So by the time you reach the Supreme Court, you're printing something like that would be about maybe 5,000 pages per case per justice. So
Yeah,
it does
yeah,
take its toll. And then a
yeah,
lot of things that people don't consider. Where are all of these documents stored? That's hundreds of
exactly,
thousands, if not
exactly.
millions of pages. What,
Yeah,
in a warehouse somewhere that could burn, that could water down, that could
yeah,
maanay? There's a lot of things that could happen.
yeah. Tandaan ko
Right.
tuloy, attorney, na nagpaano kasi ako ng condo. I bought one, and they asked me five copies of this very thick para lang mapanotaryo. Di ko alam bakit five copies. And each of it was
Well,
like 200 or 300 pesos, 'di ba? So, thank you.
see,
Thank you for
exactly.
doing this. Yeah.
Well, one, congratulations on your condo. Little
Thank
little
you.
little
Thank you.
little flex there. I love it. I like it. But no, that's a very good example of what we can do.
Yeah.
We would have saved all of your printing time. We can save your
Yeah.
notarization time, and maybe even your storage, or you or your
Yeah.
real estate agent storing those
Exactly.
documents can all be done on the cloud, on the blockchain.
Exactly.
No
Yeah.
longer needs to take up space on your drawer. Things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I think the reason why people generally, or maybe even older generations, generally like the physical kind of document is that exactly because it's physical, diba? It's something that you can,
Exactly.
you can really feel that, okay,
Nagawa mo. Nagawa mo. O,
parang,
hawak
oh,
mo.
if you
Mhm.
give
Yeah.
it to the next person, it's there. Parang it's
Yeah.
it's a
No,
physical embodiment,
there's
no?
a lot of things that can be said. There can be a lot of cases that can be made for the use of paper. I'm sure you guys have
Mm-mm.
seen people talk about journaling, or people who are fan of books saying there's no replacing
Yeah.
a paper book over a digital book.
Yeah.
But we have a level of responsibility we have to look at that. Yeah, it's nice. There's a certain romance to reading a paper bound book, that smell that can never be replicated by your Kindle or your iPad.
Yeah.
But we have to think towards the future. Eventually, do we really need that book we're going to read once or twice sitting in our
Yeah.
bookshelf? Is
Mm.
this book worth that one tree?
Yeah.
It's just an example of how paper is really should be something of the past, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest,
Right.
and how
Yeah.
we can move over digitally. And if I may, currently, the current administration has a carbon credit plan set to be imposed in 2025,
Yeah.
meaning I haven't seen the plan whatsoever, but using jurisdictions around us as a comparison, there's going to be a carbon credit threshold where your
Yeah.
carbon footprint is measured, and if you go over it, you have to pay a tax, and perhaps if you go under it, you'll get a tax credit. These are
Yeah.
all assumptions, and I'm hoping this is what will happen because this is a very good and proper step in the right direction. However, imagine how difficult that will be for businesses here in the Philippines, for SMEs in particular. If I'm not mistaken, about 99% or yeah, about 99% or 900,000 of the 1 million registered corporations in the Philippines are SMEs. So SMEs, are the lifeblood of our country.
Yeah.
They are what drives everything. But just like other small businesses, cost is very important. So a possible taxation is very difficult.
Yeah.
In the Philippines, paper is the number two solid waste that gets used, right?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, paper is the number two
Number one,
solid waste.
plastic.
So
Plastic is number one.
probably
Yeah.
Siyempre.
plastic or
Of
petroleum,
course.
who knows,
Oo.
right?
Yeah.
Um, so by 2025, which is not very long from now, if you're still using paper, you might fall short of that threshold and be a and get a carbon
Yeah.
tax. So as
Yeah.
early as now, we're trying to push people to that digitization effort through our system, and
Yeah.
we do understand that it is impossible to go paperless at the moment. At
Yeah.
UNAWA, for example, we are all but paperless except for documents again that need to be notarized because we are limited by
Yeah.
the law that it needs to be notarized. But as I said, UNAWA and a lot of other people are lobbying for the pushing of electronic notarization, which we're very excited about. Once
Yeah.
that passes, you can if 100% have a paperless workflow.
Yeah. Gino, you talked to us about, a lot of the pros to, actually going digitized, right? But reality sometimes, hits, for example, when you renew your license and you see these renewal centers not accepting any digital payments, they still prefer hard cash. I don't know. Let's just say for, uh I don't know, bureaucratic, mas madaling magdaya and whatnot, right? Digitization, right? In
Okay.
the Philippines, is it even attainable, 'di ba? I mean, maganda tong ginagawa nyo, but these are all the technologies, right? But do you think it's good you mentioned earlier you're working with the Supreme Court, 'di ba? But in terms of a full rollout with the government that's always stuck in their old ways, do you think it's going to be more challenging later on?
Of, of course, it's going to be more challenging, but 100%, I think it's attainable. To really push for
That's nice
this
to know. Yeah.
the digitization of the Philippines, there are a lot of things we need to do.
Yeah.
Again, from the regulatory perspective, we have to make sure regulation is passed that allows for digitization. Another thing that could be a hindrance to digitization is a lot of people's apprehension. Perhaps it is because as we already established, they're very set in their ways of paper. They
Yeah.
don't trust the digital way, or if I'm very honest, the cost of these digital tools, right? There always is a hindrance. So, for example, at Onawa, I won't mention our competitors, right? But Onawa, one thing we wanted to think about is the end consumer. While we do target government offices, large enterprises, we also focus on small enterprises and freelancers, where we
Yeah.
know that the each peso is very valuable. So I can talk about Web3, I can talk about blockchain, I can talk about session hashing and all of the high tech features that we have. But if I'm charging 10,000 pesos a month, do I think a small enterprise will ever go digital? No.
Yeah.
So that's something we had to think about, and we had to think what do we want to achieve? Do we want to make money? Absolutely, 1,000,000,000%, of course. But how do we want to make that money? We want to make that money properly. We want to do it by affecting change and becoming, helping push forward. So these are the things we had to take into consideration in creating our products. So
Yeah.
again, I will plug Unawa a little bit. Unawa has a series of products, our own ecosystem. We have Sign Secure. So the reason we came up with Sign Secure as our proof of concept is, what do you need to digitize and make a legally binding transaction? You need consent, and to get consent traditionally, it is your signature.
Yeah.
We all know how the signature works on paper. How do we transfer that onto the digital space? We need to ensure a few things. We need to make sure that the identity of the signer is beyond question, meaning that whoever signs is who they are saying they are. that the time and location where they're signing and the consent for signing is also is manifested accordingly. And importantly, and this is what a lot of platforms perhaps might miss, and this is what a lot of this sorry this is what I hope people never have to go through. But if this document comes into question, whether it be your contract, whether it be a sales invoice or receipt, you want to make sure that that digital copy has a legal effect, right? And through our digital
Yeah.
manifests, our
Yeah.
QR code
Hmm.
implementation, and our cloud storage, blockchain storage, you can make sure that the document you pull out is always the same thing. One thing we do, we know forgery is very common, especially in the digital space. No, we can have a digital contract, and then I can probably find Warren Buffett's signature online somewhere and transfer that onto that contract. Does that mean Warren Buffett signed it? Absolutely not. Through platforms like ours, we are able to make sure that the document is what it says it is. One,
Mm.
we attach a QR code that syncs to, depending on what the enterprise picks, syncs to either the cloud or the blockchain. Wherein, if a physical copy of the document ever spreads, you just scan that QR code and the
Yeah.
digital copy will be pulled up, and you always have a point of comparison. So you don't need to look through paperwork, you don't need to look through folders, filing cabinets. It's as simple as scanning an original document or searching it on our other platform, Forma, which is a document management system. Just really makes things much easier.
Yeah. I know earlier, Gino, you mentioned that legal tech can be for anyone, but I think me and Matt, parang hindi kami para dito. It's
No,
such a
kaya
complex,
yan.
there's actually a lot of complexities the way you explained it. No, I thought it was just a simple, signature and you digitalize it. It isn't pala
Actually,
the backbone.
100%, it is a simple signature. It is
Yeah.
digitalized. But we, companies like UNAWA or us at UNAWA, what we're trying to do is make sure everything in
Yeah.
the back end is being done for you, so you don't have to go through it, so that you
Awesome.
can be assured that this is really me
That's the
signing.
dream. That's the
That is
dream.
the dream.
Yeah. I think Gino, I think, I'm also looking back at your career, So earlier Matt mentioned that you also worked as a legal for MVGS, and you're also the chief legal or maybe a co-founder of a startup before, right? Which is, I think, this payment ticketing system, diba?
So you're gonna ask me how that happened?
Yeah, I mean, how that happened, and I guess what you got from it, diba? Because I can't help but think the way you're thinking right now, your mindset, no, came from those different,
100%.
touch points, right? Different stop gaps in your career.
Yes, I think my journey, as unique as it is, has helped me establish a few set of skills that are unique to me, right? So I did
Yeah,
start at one of a very big law firm at MVGS very early on in my career. Then I went over to a
yeah,
smaller boutique law firm. So I had that benefit of meeting so many people in the big law firm, and in the small law firm, the
yeah,
that hustle and bustle of having to do everything yourself. So I experienced both sides, and I've figured out where digitization can be a tool. And then moving on to that, I became the chief legal officer of a Philippine company with Singaporean roots in Pouch Nation. So that was a
yun
guest
pala. Yeah,
management ticketing system, right? So in that company, I was the lawyer for that company. Very different for what I am now at Onawa, where I'm the chief operating officer that happens to be a lawyer. Um, but in that sense, I got to meet developers. I got to be around developers. I got to be around fundraisers, fundraising. So I really saw what that life was like and how to balance it out. And I think that's where I really fit in now. I can
yeah,
merge, I can merge that legal aspect as well as that developer relationship. I know how to, well, I'd like to think so at least. I know how to manage developers. I've
yeah,
worked with them for many years now. I know how hard developers are work. These guys are the unsung heroes of every tech company, without a doubt. The
yeah,
CTOs, the QA, the developers. It's never, unfortunately for them, the limelight tends to fall on the CEO, tends to fall on the COO. But we just talk. You know, we perhaps sugarcoat a few things, make it sound impressive. Perhaps with a
yeah,
some highfalutin words, I'll try to make Unawa sound a little better than the
yeah,
competitor. But really, why is
yeah,
Unawa better than the competitor? It's because of my team. It's because of my developers. It's because of the CTO and how he runs everything. And um, not growing up, but being around so many developers and other startups, I know how to manage time, I suppose. I've been in other companies where they're like, they can't understand why a developer can't suddenly, oh, change the color of my website, add this web page. Why can't you do it now? I want it now. It's
Exactly,
that
exactly.
gap
Oh, I
that I
feel that.
fill,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
make sure that that is met so that no one really is overly pressured to do anything. And I think that gap is what I fill.
Another thing, Gino, that's I think proliferating right now is ChatGPT, diba?
Oh,
Wherein here's an AR powered technology that probably right now in a legal point of view, baka kaya niyang magsulat ng I don't know a notary form for me, instead of me having to find the template in Google, right?
you don't have
Um,
to find the template in
well,
Google because it will be available for you in safe form very soon.
okay,
No,
there you go.
Wow,
no, but
Wow.
seriously,
yun.
Ito na nga, bibili na talaga, mag-a-apply na talaga ako para dyan
that
sa
that
safe
chat
form
thing
na yan.
is it's incredible.
Yeah,
I played
it's
around with
incredible,
it.
right?
I've helped it's helped me come up with ideas as well. I'm not going to lie, but I've also
Yeah,
had fun with it. Just a bit off tangent. I wanted to really see how far and how fast this thing goes. So I'm a fan of
yeah,
football. I'm a
yeah,
football fan. So I typed a football question once. I asked it to explain the offside rule, something
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
I can't seem to
Ooh,
explain to other people. And it did it in a second. So I decided to have a little fun because I saw on Instagram that someone did something like this. I go, can you please explain the offside rule as a pirate?
yeah,
In a
Oh,
matter of
really?
seconds, it explained the offside rule, speaking as a pirate. So the advancements of technology to something that ridiculous is clearly
yeah,
there. So if you incorporate all of that into something that's, and I use my words carefully, more meaningful. And when I say more meaningful than asking the offside rule spoken as a pirate. There are
yeah.
things that will really be helpful in tools like this.
More
So
efficient. Yeah,
this AI, this will allow us to fill up some contracts, some forms, some templated forms will be much easier. Human
yeah,
error will no longer be an issue. In law, that comes up where if you type a number versus the wording, that will make a huge difference. And from the legal
yeah,
standpoint, me speaking personally as a lawyer who did all of this, we get tired also. Whether you're a top notcher from Ateneo or from Harvard, that human component will always be there. You will get tired. So while your idea comes from you, execution doesn't always need to be human so
yeah,
much, especially with the advent of all of this artificial intelligence, with these digital automations. And that's what we're trying to do.
yeah.
I will be very clear, AI will never replace a human lawyer. I'm going to put that down now.
Wow.
Quote me.
I
Yeah, boy,
hope
no.
so. I
I
hope
hope so,
so.
because
Right.
otherwise, I spent 8 years for nothing. No.
Pero in that sense, do you think in a world that Unawa would be, maybe with AI powered na rin, 'di ba? Hindi kaya tutumban naman lahat ng mga notaryo natin. Right? Just recently, nagpa-notarize ako ng isang form. I paid them like, 500 pesos, right? Pero pag may Unawa na, like, don't you think notary offices will, a little bit less relevant? Sorry. Yeah.
Well, yes and no. With the advent and the pushing of electronic notarization through the help of the Supreme Court, what it will really do is really make sure we meet the spirit of the law. Okay. I don't mean to step on any toes or insult anyone at this point,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
notarization is very important. I have
Yeah.
a lot of cases has turned on the fact that a document was not notarized properly. In fact, that was part of
Grabe,
my
no? Yeah.
strategy as when I was in litigation. This was taught to me by my mentors, and I'm sure a lot of lawyers should do this first. One of the first questions I ask any witness is very simple, like, "Did you sign this document?" Yes, sir. Did you have this document notarized? Yes. Can you describe the office of the notary? And then they're a bit flustered na. Oh, what time was it?
Huli
Can you
agad, no?
describe
Huli,
the no?
huli agad.
Because the
Yeah,
law
huli agad, no?
requires that you actually appear before the notary, meaning you should be in front of the notary having your document notarized. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, Lance. Pretty sure that's not what you did for your contract of sale, no? Because it's
Ah,
practice na pinapanotaryo na lang. And no, I do it
totoo
too.
yun.
I
No,
do it
that's
too.
true.
That
That's true,
that
Gino. Yeah,
panotaryo concept is very convenient, but it is dangerous. So people think that notarization is just the final step. But what if, like for you,
yeah,
Lance, as an example, what if you have your contract comes into question and you really weren't before that notary? You might have an issue
Yeah.
with your document. So with electronic
Yeah.
notarization, what it will do is it will weed out all of the notaries who aren't doing things by the book, or even worse, it will weed out the notaries who lease their notarial seal and notarial commission to
Mm.
non-lawyers, right? So it,
Yeah.
it has to become a business, and it's hard to stop because it's so much more convenient. I mean, let's say Enrique Razon, for example, right? He is a very busy man, very powerful man. Do you think of all the contracts he signs, he'll really stand and
Kaya nga.
meet before a notary? Very likely he'll have a notary come to him because he has that benefit.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't have the time to actually sit before a notary because of
Yeah.
that physical component. So through the use of electronic notarization, we will make sure that it is still valid. And not just that, all of the digital components that are happening on the back end will really secure this fact even further. So
Yeah.
what we propose, what the Supreme Court, what we're doing the Supreme Court is not just will make the notarization digital, which one will eliminate the possibility of a forged document down the line. Two, it will
Yeah.
eliminate the possibility of a lost document, right? And three, it will save all that time and space retrieving that document because this is now all digitized. It's all up in the
Mm.
blockchain, it's all up in your servers, depending on how you want it. And it's not subject to repudiation anymore because of these QR code mechanisms. No matter what, you can always get down to the base document and find the authentic document.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's not the sexiest thing that I'm doing. I think when I try to tell my
Yeah.
friends about what I'm doing, I see them kind of drift off, just like, yeah, just say you're a lawyer, man. Like that's a
Yeah.
lot of information you're explaining. So, like, what do you do?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
a lawyer. That's my answer to them. Normally, though, what do I do?
Yeah.
I seek to digitize the business workflow in a legally binding way. That's like, what does that mean? So, kakatamad, diba? So I just stick to what
Yeah.
saying I'm a lawyer. But in reality, we're trying to do so much more that's more beneficial to
Yeah.
everyone. In fact,
Yeah. I can't help but think you're also serving the lawyers, 'di ba? Na parang kanina kasi inisip ko para to sa customers eh. Wala nang hassle, secured na.
Mm-mm.
But right now the way you
For the
put it, 'di ba?
businesses.
May 'di ba? May backup na, 'di ba? It's very digitized.
yeah.
So
For
yeah.
example, if I may, Lance, so, I do get excited about this. I hope your viewers don't find it a bit weird. But you said, I'll give you an example of what we do. Um, we've automated the minutes of a board meeting, for example. Every registered
Okay.
corporation who do the things by the book should have secretary certificates, should have board resolutions, and this all stems from a board meeting, whether it's a regular board meeting or a special board meeting. Your
Yeah.
resolution will stem from this meeting. To get your corporate secretary to sign off on that secretary certificate or that board resolution, you have to have a majority number of the directors approve it. And this is normally
Mm-hmm.
done by signing your minutes of the meeting. Prior to the pandemic, or even now, a lot of this happens. I know firsthand because actually, I should have said this earlier. The founding company of UNAWA is PJS Law. They are a
Ah, okay.
consistently top
Okay.
five law firm of the
Yeah.
Philippines for the
Yeah.
last 20
Okay.
years. One of the,
Right.
one of the better firms, right? So you can
Yeah.
see that even they have technological innovation. They have every resource at their disposal. They're very
Mm-hmm.
good clients. But what are their delays? Their delays are the same as even the smallest law firm in the farthest province. That people are slow to act. So let's say you have 10 directors in a company. Prior to a digitization method, you would have to send that minute in to all of the 10. And by the
Yeah.
time it
Grabe.
gets back to the corporate secretary, it could take a few months. When in reality,
Inefficient.
all
Grabe.
he or she needed was those six signatures. So with us, once
Yeah.
the sixth signature is signed, the corporate secretary gets notified, and he or she doesn't even
Yeah.
have to wait for the minutes because he knows the
Okay.
resolution has been passed. That's just one
Yeah.
way that we can speed things up. So what used to take a couple of weeks can be literally done in 5 minutes. And you can see how valuable that would be.
My
All while
God.
being secured and safe, of course.
Not only the consumer, the lawyers, everyone involved in the
Everyone, really,
company, it just makes it
everyone.
easier. Parang napapansin ko na, I guess you're very passionate about this. Obviously, it just
the
goes off the screen, no? Pero parang I guess was there a moment when you were going down this path? Obviously, you could have gone like the normal legal route, no, where you could be in court, in litigation, and all that. But you decided to go this route. Was there a moment that kind of helped you feel justified that, hey, you know what, I made the right decision. I'm happy in my role. This is the path for me. Say a specific moment or experience that made you realize
Mm,
that.
I don't think I can point it down to a specific moment. I think it's just
Mm,
a series of achievements that has gotten me, that makes me know that I'm in the right going in the right direction, not necessarily have taken the steps towards that right direction because I'm not yet there. As I said, we're still doing a lot to get our digitization. See, if I'm in this business, I need to learn to say that word more efficiently. Digitization, right? So apologies for mumbling there. But for me to really get this drive for digitization going, there are a lot of still a lot of things that can be done, and
yeah.
it will get done. I guarantee that. I feel it deep down that it will be done. In 5 years, I believe no big company or no one will be using paper to transact things. No one will have
Oh,
the issue
wow.
of no one will.
Really?
That's what I believe. That's my goal. No one will be concerned that is this a valid signature? Is like what we hope to do is eliminate things like forgery and really protect the
Yeah.
business transaction at every level for
Yeah.
any enterprise for any company. And again,
Yeah.
you know, I know it does sound corny, but I really do believe that the environmental impact that a tech company like UNAWA can achieve is nothing
Yeah.
to be shy about.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I love how multidisciplinary this kind of talk was, where I thought it was just going to be just like this tech startup or this legal tech startup, pero it just touches on so many things.
I think we have to be
Yeah,
Yeah.
multidisciplinary now. There are so many
For
things
sure.
that's
exactly.
going
Yeah,
on with with
Yeah.
all these advancements in technology. There are also negatives to it, and that's what we try to do. We try to make sure that these negatives don't outweigh the positives.
Gino, paano kung after this episode, an audience or a listener actually reaches out to us, right, and ask us, how do you become, somewhat of that legal tech entrepreneur side, right? And you mentioned earlier, yes, hindi kailangan ng lawyer background, right? Pero kung gusto na lang maging, working in something like Unawa, no, where you're advancing legal tech, how do they start, if they're not lawyers?
Well, that's a difficult one. How do they start advancing legal tech if
Yeah.
they're not lawyers? Um,
Yeah.
that's a good
Pwede ba
question.
yun?
Medyo
Pwede
mahirap
ba
nga,
yun?
no? Like, how can you fix
Medyo
something you
mahirap,
don't
right?
know is broken, right? What
Yeah.
I will say to that is, no matter what industry you're in, improvements can always be made, right? And if you have that entrepreneurial aspect or that entrepreneurial spirit, take note of those improvements. Think of what I'm doing on a daily basis that can be done easier through technology or through
Oh,
a
ang dami.
process,
Ang dami.
diba?
Ang
So there's a
dami.
lot of
Yeah.
opportunities. Or second, think of what won't change, what will still be around for, let's say, in 10 years. What won't be different in 10 years? So, like, for example, in our case, um, two parties coming together to manifest consent in whatever way will not change in 10 years. That's how a deal gets done. But in
Yeah.
10 years,
Yeah.
that may not necessarily be done on paper. But that coming together to agree on something will still be done. So, how can you improve that? So, those are the kind of things you should always watch out for, whether it be in the legal space or not. But if you do want to get into the legal space, I do, I do really recommend pursuing your legal career. A lot of people do have that dream. If that is your dream, if that is your aspiration, chase it by all means. But make sure
Yeah.
it really is what your dream
Mm.
is. Unfortunately, with all of these cool TV shows and these movies and suits, people think
Suits.
that's what the
Yeah.
lawyer life is.
I
It's
knew
not.
it. I knew it.
It's
Yeah.
not. It's
Yeah.
not. Right? I thought that's what the
Yeah.
lawyer life was. When I first started as a lawyer, pucha, naka-suit. Like after work, I'll go to a
Wow.
bar in a suit. Like now that I look about, like, who is this douche? Sorry, who is this?
Yeah.
There I go again. Trying to correct
It's
myself with
okay.
something even worse. Look at this kid, man. He's in a suit, sweating, pero nagpapakulang. I mean, that's not what a lawyer is. So it's a lot of hard work. It's not
Yeah.
all the glitz and glamour that you see on TV. You can aspire and you can get to that, but there's a lot of steps to get there. And through that journey, like in my case, that journey is where I noticed a lot of things can be improved from a
As you
technological
said.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gino, I don't know
Yeah.
if you know this, but I actually studied legal management back in Ateneo. So
Hey, me
parang
too.
gets ko yung sinasabi mo na people watch Suits and they're like so inspired and really want to become a lawyer because of it. But I guess, we're recording this episode shortly after the New Year, the Christmas holidays, no. I'm sure that you've spent a lot of time with your family and maybe even explaining what you do for work. Does that
I
ever get
try.
difficult?
Absolutely,
And
man. With like, for example,
oh,
my parents or my
oh.
grandparents, they're like, so what do you do? I'm a lawyer. Okay. You go to court? No. Ah, do you have a list of clients? Not in the way you're thinking. Ah, so how are you a lawyer? There are many things but what most people see is just the glamour side, the glitzy side, that one aspect.
Mm,
I am
yeah.
still a lawyer. I use my legal experience and my legal practice to further improve what I had seen to be missing. And being in a company like Unawa has given me that avenue to do that.
How about this? Gino, for anyone that wanted to learn about legal tech, I'm not sure if Unawa provides any source, reading sources, or something that they can learn from, right? Anything that they can just search. Not Suits,
Yeah.
definitely not Suits. To us, Suits is so glamorized, right? What would you suggest naman yung simulan nila para lang maintindihan nila, kahit wala silang time or resources to take up.
Where can people also find like any resources to kind of get a bit better understanding of like how legal forms work, like notarization, as you said. Like normally, you don't have, you don't. It's not as accessible, So
Yeah.
parang
It's
if
really
you have
not
any
accessible.
pointers,
It's not at all.
yeah.
Thankfully, unawa.asia exists where
Ay,
all of those questions can be
Yeah.
answered.
ayun.
Whether it be the blog posts about the importance of
Seriously?
notarization,
Wow.
yeah, it's all there.
Yeah. Awesome.
Again, not to be too self-plugging, but apart
Mm-mm.
from our product offerings, which is on our website, we do have educational campaigns. We do have educational
Yeah.
articles about these sort of things, the importance of
Yeah.
notarization, the importance of using a valid signature platform, and making sure all of these things are up to standard and up to par, up to code, everything. Because right
Yeah.
now we are limited by the rules of our respective jurisdictions. But as the
Yeah.
world is becoming more global, as the world is
Yeah.
getting smaller through technology, in time we are going to get there. Um, Unawa, I believe this to be true. The Unawa platform is to paper what uh, email is to snail mail. It's a change. We are at that cusp. So right now we are at that point where people are still apprehensive because they are very set in their ways, very similar
Mm-mm.
to people who used to mail or who used to fax. Now we're getting there. So what I will say is, don't be scared of change. Um, Figure out what you're trying to do. Research the platforms you're using and why you're choosing them. In fact,
Yeah.
look into Anawa very deeply. Challenge our
Yeah.
security, challenge our mechanisms, make sure it is really what you needed, and I promise you, you will get the answers you want that way. But just don't be scared of change. Yeah.
Yeah, that's big because I mean I can't count the days. Sobrang daming days ko na nainisip. I wish I had an uncle that was a lawyer. I wish
Why?
I had
What
a
did you
friend
do?
that was a lawyer because no, I mean because
There's always a story
there are a
here,
lot
Lance.
of I mean, there are a lot of legalities, sabi nga ni Matt, legal forms that sometimes you just can't help but man, gusto
uh,
ko ipa-check to. Gusto ko
No,
maintindihan to,
that's very true.
right?
I
Yeah.
Again, this is not self-serving. I will stress the importance of consulting a lawyer for any important transaction. Let's say, Lance, apologies. I'll go back to your example. Anyone purchasing a piece of real estate, it's very important to consult a lawyer. Simple look at the contract. I know contracts of lease, contracts of sale are available online, but there are a lot of things that won't be there. For example, and I don't mean to stress you out, and I apologize if I am.
tinatakot mo si Lance eh.
For example, for example, there's normally a provision for venue or jurisdiction, right? This is where, should your contract be called to court, this is where you go. you can't go anywhere else
Yeah.
because you've agreed to it. And a lot of my friends, I've noticed, they've signed contracts where the venue was perhaps in Davao, which makes it difficult for someone in Manila, or even worse, in another country. And I'll go, see,
May
this is
ganun
simple
pala,
thing like
no?
this. It's, one word, one country will make a big
Yeah.
difference. And that's the
Yeah.
kind of thing you need to look into. That's the kind of thing that can be checked. Through UNAWA,
Yeah.
through automation, through SafeForm, you will know, you yourself will say, oh, make sure my jurisdiction is in Makati. You plug in Makati in that field of SafeForm, it will always be Makati, and you're sure it will be Makati. If it's a different city, a different region, you can plug that in also. You won't miss it out in any way through manual input or anything like that.
Yeah.
Don't run to your
Wow.
contract. I'm sure you're good, Lance.
Huh?
Unfortunately, you brought it
I
up.
hope so. I
Naging
mean,
example ka.
yeah. I mean, yung developer namin sinasabi template na daw yung contract, wala na kaming magagawa. Eh di, I'm not sure if that's even legal,
Natatakot
right?
na si
So,
Lance.
'di ba? Binasa mo pero hindi mo rin pwede palitan, right? So,
For
I
the
don't know,
most
I don't
part,
know.
these templates, there's something called a contract of
Right?
adhesion.
Right?
A contract of adhesion is a
Ay, oo.
contract that you can't comment on. That's not legally
Exactly.
binding. But you're fine, Lance. I
Yeah.
guarantee I'm sure you're fine.
I hope so.
Unfortunately
I
lang
hope so.
naging example ka. But
Pero Lance, at
Yeah.
least now you know an attorney, di ba?
absolutely.
I,
Now you have a
Gino,
lawyer to
know.
call. Because I'm sure
And
you
now,
weren't thinking about your contract of lease. I'm sure you were thinking about the lawyer probably when you had a scrap at 3 in the morning. I'll be
I
there for you,
know.
Lance.
Oh
Wow.
Give me that
dear.
One
call.
call,
Oh
no?
dear.
Oh.
Thank God for Unawa.Asia, though.
Yeah,
Wow.
thank God for now,
Oh.
Asia.
Anyways, Attorney Gino, just one last question.
Yeah.
You're in the Offbeat podcast, and our audience is usually the corporate guys. Probably some are in the legal industry, some are in the tech industry, some are in retail, diba? But at the end of the day, we want to expose them to different careers like yourselves, right? Na legal tech, diba? What do you think can the corporate guys learn from what you guys are doing in Unawa? Anything that they can apply in their day-to-day lives right now.
That's a great question. So, from the perspective of Unawa, I think I would answer that by saying, don't be apprehensive towards change.
Yeah.
We at Unawa are pushing for a very big change in the way we do business. It might seem very simple to say digitization, but that entails a lot of uplifting, a lot of change in your operations, right? A lot of retraining, but it does have its benefit. It will pay off. Don't be changed. Don't be worried about that. So don't be afraid of change, whether it be technological, operational. Use the tools that are available to the
Yeah.
best, to however best it can serve you. And for the career, for the people, the more corporate people, if you learn anything from me, um, I guess you can say that paths change, roads fork, but they also circle back. So as cliche as it might
Yeah.
be, don't be too afraid of the journey. Go
Yeah.
do your journey, follow the journey, follow your path, and pick up things along the way. Don't rush through it. You know how they say,
Yeah.
stop and smell the roses. If you're going through
Yeah.
to it so fast, you won't see the rose. How can you smell it, right? If that
Beautiful.
makes any sense.
Yeah.
So just take your time. Your path will be presented in front of you.
You're actually a successful use case wherein I studied law for a lot of years, but I didn't really, stick to being a lawyer, diba? You actually shifted to a different role in your life, right? And
Yeah,
I
and
think
a lot of
ang
people do
dami rin
that.
ganun.
A lot of people do that.
Nanghihinayang sa lawyer, diba? Nanghihinayang sa lawyer background nila, but here you
Absolutely,
are,
that's a very good point, Lance. A
sobrang
lot of
happy.
people.
Yeah.
I'll admit, at one point, I got burnt out as a lawyer for reasons I think need not be expressed in this episode anymore.
I know, right? Yeah.
Corruption. It got painful, right? So,
Right.
and I found
Right.
myself thinking, I spent 8 years to get to this point. I spent 8 years I did 8 years of school to become a lawyer.
Yeah.
Do I really want to throw that all away because I got this way? And I don't think I threw that all away. While I might not
Yeah.
be that practicing lawyer people are familiar with, I was still able to use my degree, my law degree to an advantage that's
Yeah.
not the traditional way. There's always a
Mm-mm.
way to benefit yourself, and just find that, no matter how long it might
Yeah.
take.
Ganda. Ganda. Thank you, Attorney Gino Jacinto, for taking us off the beaten path. Attorney, anything that you want to plug, want to talk about right now, diba? If people want to contact you as well, what's the best way? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Anything I want to plug? Sure. So, for all those watching, please make sure to watch every episode of Offbeat. Don't miss
Thank
it.
Yes.
you,
Backtrack if you
thank you,
can.
thank you, thank you.
The last one had a singer. Now it's a lawyer.
Oh
So you
yeah,
can see
yeah,
it's a good mix. But if you do want to contact UNAWA, you can visit us at unawa.asia, or you can email hello at unawa, help at unawa.asia to really get anything you need. But yeah, the website is a good starting point, unawa.asia, and you can find
yep.
everything
Mhm.
there.
Awesome. All right. That's it, guys. Thank you guys for listening to the show. If you liked our show, catch us on at the Project Offbeat at Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Attorney Gino, thank you for your time.
Thanks, guys. Great show.